about Indigenous sovereignty and Indigenous rights to land and resources, and that nation-to-nation relationship is something that has to be reinstituted. I have learned over the last 10 years about a history of violence towards Indigenous people and their lands and territories, and how that needs to be acknowledged and isn't part of the grand narrative or discourse in Canada, that we've maintained a history of sort of innocence and goodness in spite of ongoing attacks and violence and genocide. And that to begin this relationship and to begin any kind of movement, that has to be acknowledged. And so Idle No More has tried to talk about that when we talk about Indigenous sovereignty and environmental protections, that core relationship or that key relationship is the relationship that always needs to be at the center of our discussions. And this has been 400 years of ongoing violent colonialism. And one of the things I wanted to talk about that was mentioned this morning is that this is an ideological war that we're in. And what I've recognized and what I've learned from my teachers is that really the capitalism and the corporatism, the rampant racism and misogyny, that the nationalism and the militarism, that these are colonial pursuits that have always been here. That really, and I think we can recognize that these are fascist ideologies that may be overt now, they may seem more extreme to some of us, but really, that is our history. That is our story. And that the stories that we hear of Canadian innocence and that identity is actually a story that's been created and maintained for a very long time through all of our institutions, through government, through education, through our justice system, that story is so powerful that it infuses all of us as Canadian citizens with an identity that is not the core of our truth here. That as a third-generation white settler, my family has benefited from colonialism in ways that settlers of color are positioned differently, and of course in ways that Indigenous peoples are positioned differently. So what we talk about a lot and what we think about a lot is, how do we work across these differences that have been created by colonization through policies and practices, differences of race and class and gender and sexuality and ability? And those divisions are so powerful that, of course, coalition groups, and it was mentioned this morning, have difficulty working together. And I was so excited when we were invited to come here because I realized this is a chance for us to see some core goals. What I do see with the Harper government is that he's able to take a variety of different interests across the right and put them under the umbrella of profit. And so people who have a variety of different positions within the conservative agenda are coming together under the umbrella of profit. And you can see how powerful that is. And that really those fascist ideologies are really what we're talking about. And so my role in activism has been in Saskatoon. It's been as an educator and teacher, and it's been so important to us to see education as the goal, building consciousness in Canadians as the goal, building consciousness in Canadians about Indigenous sovereignty and Indigenous rights, and that this is Indigenous land, and consciousness about what's happening to our environment. And I think we were both really surprised at, all four of us, at how quickly this grew. And we haven't had a lot of time to adjust to the movement and how quickly it grew. And as you can see, none of us are experts in social movements. This is a grassroots movement. And so we're working with media with some knowledge of the problem with corporate media, but certainly not experts in that. And we're working with other groups with some knowledge about their goals, but again, this is a process. And everyone that's come to us, and people have already come to us today and offered their solidarity and support, means so much to us, because we know that that's what it's going to take to keep this movement going. And it can be under the umbrella of Idle No More, it can be allied with Idle No More, it can be in solidarity with Idle No More. There's so many different things happening now. Some people locally and globally are working closely with Idle No More, and some people are working on their own. You can see how leadership has just activated across Canada. And I mean, we started in Saskatoon knowing that we wanted to take the petitions, and take the ideas and get as many Canadians to understand these bills as we possibly could. But we also recognize that these bills are symbolic of something much bigger and a long history of this happening across this continent and, of course, other spaces. And so I think the solidarity is coming because other groups are seeing that this is their story as well, and that these are their fears as well, and they're coming at it with their own gifts and skills and knowledge, and activating it in a variety of different ways, from lawyers to artists to, activists who have laid the groundwork for this. Like, we acknowledge that there are activists that have been working their whole lives, and obviously this room is a testament to that have laid the groundwork for this movement this spring. But I think so many people ask us, like, why do you think it grew so quickly and became a global movement? And of course, some people say it's social media, Facebook and Twitter that we use, that's part of it. Some people talk about the fact that, this is, again, a shared story, that these are shared concerns, and of course that's part of it. But we've also talked about it being a spiritual movement, and that there are things about this movement that are inexplicable. But we know that elders have come to us over and over again saying that they have been praying for the movement and having ceremonies for the movement, and we believe that that spiritual element to the movement is so key, and it's the core and the heart of the movement. Education, building consciousness, and building solidarity is a spiritual act. That fighting oppression, racism, and classism and sexism, that is a spiritual act. Those are spiritual acts. And so when we act together to fight that kind of colonial oppression, I think that that's where the spiritual element is activated, and it can be activated through the leadership of everyone. And we worry about, grassroots maintaining their voice through this. Like, that's a concern for us. And so as we work and talk with you, we hope that you have some really solid ideas about how we can grow, how we can somehow work with corporate media, although I don't know if that's possible, how we can, do justice to the beauty of this movement, but maintain that grassroots part, which is, all 4 of us are moms, and that's our first identity.